I was going over my YouTube comments, and there was a comment by someone who goes by the handle of Make It Happen. I have no idea what his name is. And he was looking at, well, he had a question about apples, that his apples were crispy when they came out of the freeze dryer, but after he packed them up, and I guess weeks or months later, he'd open them up, they became kind of soft and spongy. And so I thought, okay, well, I'm sure I made a video on apples, and so I went through all my videos, and at the time of this taping, I have 179 videos, and it took a while to go through them, and I know I've used this machine, but I can't remember how I used it, but I do not have a video on apples, which is really interesting because I use apples all the time. Apples are a great thing to experiment with because they're very sensitive to temperature and vacuum, and you could say that the apple is like the guinea pig of the freeze drying products. If you can freeze dry a good apple, you can probably freeze dry anything else. So I was surprised to find out that I've never made a video on apples, and so we're going to do apples today. And I have this piece of equipment. This thing dates back, well, not this one in particular, but the whole idea of this apple peeler dates back probably 100 years, if not more. And whoever invented it, bless you. I mean, this is one of the handiest little kitchen gadgets I've ever had. It's simple, it works, and it's totally amazing and worth every dollar. And it has a little suction cup base to this. And so I got some Pink Lady apples that are on sale. Most of these are in still pretty good shape. I do have some that are a little bit bruised here and there, but that's okay. We're going to cut those out. We're going to make a bowl of water that has some Fruit Fresh in it. If you don't have Fruit Fresh, you can grind up a couple of vitamin C pills, because that's basically what Fruit Fresh is ascorbic acid. So we're going to get everything ready. We're going to peel some apples, put them in the tray, and freeze dry them, and then go on from that point. I'm getting ready to do this video, and I go into my pantry, and lo and behold, I have no Fruit Fresh, but I do have vitamin C. And so we're going to make this a two-prong adventure. We're going to take 4 cups of water, which I have right there, and 4 vitamin C pills, and these are 500 milligrams. I got a mortar and pestle here. I'm going to go ahead and just crush these up. And I'm going to put for each cup of water, I'm going to use 1 500 milligram pill of vitamin C. And that should probably do the trick to keep the apples from oxidizing. And just for grins and tickles, we have vitamin C in this bowl. And in this bowl, we're going to put 4 cups of water in here. And we're going to use lemon juice also. So we're going to do 2 trays with vitamin C, 2 trays with lemon juice. And we'll see which can hold back the oxidation better. And it would have been nice if I had Fruit Fresh so I could do that a comparison, but I just recently did the version 24 video, and I made lots of apples, and that was all with Fruit Fresh. So the big bowl is lemon juice, small bowl is vitamin C. I believe I have my station all set up. So I'm going to wet the bottom of this little suction pad, and that will help it stick to the counter a lot better. I'm going to take my apple, and we're going to go ahead and do this. Now these machines, pretty simple. There's a couple of adjustments on here. The biggest adjustment is this adjustment right here that controls the tension of the cutting arm. If that's too far out, it won't peel the peel. too far in, it'll take all the meat away. And if you haven't used one of these machines yet, you have like this imaginary line going across here that you need to put the apple in, and then where the bottom of the apple, you want to kind of line it up with that back piece, so that as it turns on its own axis. Well, and that stopped cutting here. So the first one was not the most spectacular, successful event that I've done here. So once these come out, we're going to go ahead and just slice them right down the middle. We're going to check for bruising, and they look pretty good, and we're going to go ahead and put those all in the vitamin C. I do apples a lot, and with all my grandkids around here, the apples do not last very long because these are eaten, once they're freeze dried, they're eaten immediately. So here's an apple. This is like a pink lady, but we got this great big huge bruise there. So we're going to go ahead and just, whittle it away, and then we'll trim up that area that has the bruise and cut that out. So you can see where the damage is on the bruise. These apples were pretty good, but when I brought them home, I dropped a couple and bruised them up. So just cut out the bruise, cut them in two, put them in the vitamin C water. And once these get nice and submerged, I have a colander in a bowl here. I'll go ahead and take these apples out, put them in here to drain. And once these dry off a little bit, I'll go ahead and put them in the Harvest Right tray. And there's another bruise right there. We'll just cut that out of the way. It's not about a 1/4 inch deep. A couple more bruises on this side. I've done 5 apples with vitamin C, and I have 5 apples left that we're going to use lemon juice. After that, when they're all done, we'll go ahead and tray them. And I always like to pre-freeze my food. I have an asset in my pantry. I have the freezer, so why not use it? And it just puts less wear and tear on my freeze dryer. So I always pre-freeze my food before it goes into the freeze dryer. So we're going to go ahead and finish up the apples and go to the next step. The apples are drained and they're in the trays. There's roughly about 1,148 grams in each tray. So these two right here with the L is the ones with lemon juice. These two are the ones with C are for the vitamin C. So we're going to go ahead and pre-freeze these and chill down the freeze dryer, and we're going to go ahead and start the load. These are my freeze-dried apples. This batch, which is only really a half a batch because my trays were not all the way filled, took 19 hours and 52 minutes. These apples right here are the ones that were put in lemon juice. These two trays were made with vitamin C because I ran out of Fruit Fresh. But we're going to take a closer look between the two because I think they're about equally as good. These are the apples out of my freeze dryer, and this is like a little bit of a comparison. The little C right here means these apples were treated with vitamin C, 1 500 milligram pill per 1 cup of water. The L stands for lemon juice, and that's 1 teaspoon of lemon juice per 1 cup of water. The vitamin C seemed to do much better. The lemon juice has just the slightest tinge of some oxidation on some of the apples. And as a close-up comparison between the vitamin C and the lemon juice,
you can see that the vitamin C did much better. Lemon juice, once again, just had the lightest hint of discoloration, but the taste, the flavor, not a problem.
One of the issues that commenter Make It Happen had with his apples, now these apples are nice and crisp and they're delicious. He said his apples became kind of spongy after a while. So I went into my freeze-dried inventory. That's a section of my pantry where I have Ziploc bags of different freeze-dried foods that I use almost on a weekly basis. And in my pantry, I have some apples. Now these apples were just in a Ziploc bag, nothing special, and they did not have an oxygen absorber. And these apples were dated September of 2022, and right now it's beginning of March. So these apples have been in there for quite a while. And these apples are like the ones that Make It Happen had a concern about. They are soft and they're kind of like styrofoam. They bend and they're no longer crispy, and when eaten they are chewy. Now I would not expect these apples to be like these apples down here because they were only in a Ziploc bag. So that made me wonder, how are my apples in my food supply downstairs that have been in there for several years? So I'm going to go into my inventory and find the oldest apples I have, and we're going to take a look at them.
This is my inventory sheets for my freeze-dried storage I have. And I think right now I'm up to about 60 totes with about 22 bags in each tote. Well, I'm going to be looking for apples. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to hit Control F, and this will bring up this replace screen. So I'm going to be typing in here apples, and I'm going to hit find next. And if I come down here, I have some sliced apples that I did back in September 19th of 2020. It is going to be in tote number 9, bag number 4. It looks like I also have 2 bags of apples in bag number 5. So I need to go down to my basement, find tote number 9, and grab the apples, and we will take a look at them and see what condition they're in.
These are the apples from tote number 4, bag number 5. These apples, and it doesn't say what variety they are, but these apples were freeze-dried on September the 19th, 2020. So these are almost 2.5 years old. And if you do the crunch test, if I kind of squeeze this, I can kind of hear the crunch inside. So I'm being optimistic about these apples. So we're going to go ahead and open these up. And then I will reseal them. And these are my apples. And here's my, this oxygen absorber. This is the oxygen absorber from this place on the internet that claimed that these were 300 cc oxygen absorbers, and they were basically almost worthless. But anyway, these are my apples, and here we go. These are crunchy and delicious, and these are absolutely dry, not like the apples in my pantry, which are basically wiggle waggly now. So my apples are still crispy after 2.5 years. And so I guess my thoughts to commenter Make It Happen is, my guess, when he put his apples into his bag, some of the apples may have had just a slight amount of moisture, which basically reconstituted the entire apple amount and made it moist again. Somehow humidity or moisture got back into his apples, because these apples after 2.5 years are really, really good. Now these apples were just in a standard Harvest Right bag, and they worked out just fine. Now recently I started vacuum sealing everything, and I'll explain that later, but I've become a die-hard vacuum sealer prepper, if you want to call it that. Now, you can kind of tell the difference between this bag, which was just lying flat, and this bag, which was vacuum sealed, because you can see this one right here has virtually all the air has been taken out of it. But I'm going to go ahead and open this up, and we're going to compare these 2.5-year apples to these apples which were done just about 2 weeks ago, because I've always wondered about breakage. So we're going to take these apples. So and do a side-by-side comparison. So if you take a look at my freeze-dried apples, they're crispy still, very crispy, but you can see where the vacuum forces have shattered these apples. So if you take a look at this pile, I mean, there's little bits and pieces compared to these apples, they're more whole, which is really not a problem. If I'm going to say make apple pie out of these apples, you'd never know the difference. But these are pretty smashed up, so I might have to think twice about some of the things I vacuum pack, such as like apples, asparagus, things that are going to be a little bit on the delicate side. They're going to get crushed. So these look a little bit better for snacking and such. I mean, you can eat either one. There's not a problem. They taste the same. Now, here's something that's also very interesting. I got this block right here, and it's basically up around the oxygen absorber right there. And although this is one big solid mass, it is still very dry. So maybe vacuum packing is not the best idea when it comes to some things. And what's really interesting is this little packet right here. This is made by Fresh Us. So I just opened this up. These are like 2 weeks old, and as I'm holding this in my hand, it's actually starting to warm up, which is an indication to me that this oxygen absorber is still not spent, and it still is quite soft. It's not gritty at all. So this is telling me that through vacuum packing, the vacuum itself took most of this air out, and probably didn't have to use this absorber to remove the remaining air, because it's still nice and soft and actually getting quite warm. So it's telling me that vacuum packing is really not a bad idea, although it can be somewhat destructive. I hope you learned something. I appreciate your time you took with me on this little adventure. Please subscribe, and remember, go forth and freeze dry the world.